10:23 hours local. Harvest City, downtown. The being stood motionless atop the skeletal remains of a skyscraper, balanced precariously on the fractured edge of what had once been its rooftop. The steel structure warped and twisted by the fundamental forces he unleashed. With its shattered windows gaping open, the building was remarkably still upright, yet far too damaged to ever be used again. As the being surveyed the scene, its cloak rippled silently around it, absorbing every trace of light with wavelengths longer than gamma rays, rendering it a spectral void amid the devastation. Below stretched a gaping crater, a raw, smoking wound torn violently into the heart of the city. Smouldering debris littered the ground, glowing embers mingling with drifting ash. Each particle glittered sharply in the intense rays of a brilliant star, illuminating what had, mere minutes earlier, been an idyllic day. Warm sunlight, clear skies, and laughter echoing through bustling streets. Now, only ruin and grief remained. Distant sirens wailed, punctuated by intermittent cries of agony and confusion from the survivors scattered through the rubble. Secondary explosions rumbled sporadically, each blast shaking the fractured ground and sending fresh columns of smoke spiraling upward. Yet, the figure remained utterly still, invisible eyes fixed on the destructions brought beneath. A gust of wind surged across the ruined skyscraper, stirring the heavy cloak around its broad shoulders and making it billow around its stock-still figure. Had its cloaking system been deactivated, you could be forgiven into thinking someone tied a cape around a statue. Pieces of debris, shattered glass and splintered metal drifted through the air around it, oblivious to its presence. Listening quietly, the distant screams of children and anguished cries of mothers and fathers echoed in its ears, though uncertainty gripped the being. It couldn't be sure if the haunting sounds were truly here, carried by the wind, or trapped forever within the tormenting confines of its memories. 11:46 hours local. Harvest City, downtown. The woman stood flanked by a solemn line of serious-looking officials, each wearing expressions of grim responsibility. Her posture radiated authority tempered by compassion, the weight of leadership evident in the gentle yet determined gaze of her four eyes, each pair scanning the anxious crowd independently. Her skin displayed the respectful tint of sadness and quiet resolve expected from someone in her position, not betraying even a hint of the seething frustration she truly felt. In front of her, a hastily assembled group of reporters clustered together, dozens of camera drones hovering silently above them, capturing every angle amid the smoky haze drifting from the nearby devastation. "Ma'am?" a reporter shouted urgently, eyes wide with concern. "What is the estimated death toll at this time?" She took a measured breath, carefully choosing her words. "The city of Harvest is home to approximately 83 million men, women, and children. This cowardly attack, targeting the busiest area during the busiest time of day, is estimated to have claimed the lives of over 14 million of our fellow Vishari." A collective gasp rippled through the reporters, the expression contorting in shock and horror. Another voice quickly rose above the murmurs, filled with emotion and urgency. "Do we know what caused this?" One of the officials beside her leaned in quickly, whispering quickly in her ear. The woman's jaw tightened imperceptibly as she nodded, the cause in her head vibrating subtly with suppressed tension. Turning back to the reporters, her voice remained steady, firm and controlled. "We are currently investigating multiple leads. There are no confirmed causes at this time. But let me be clear. Whatever or whoever is responsible will be found, and they will be held accountable for every single life lost here today." Without waiting for further questions, she turned sharply, the officials moving swiftly to accompany her as she strode purposefully towards the smoking ruins, deeper into the heart of the devastated city. The state-owned reporters knew better than to ask the real questions they wanted to ask. As they walked away from the reporters, she engaged in quiet, compassionate conversation about rescue efforts, and the urgent need to support the survivors. Her tone was gentle, reassuring, carefully maintaining appearances until she was certain they were beyond any eavesdropping range. Mid-sentence, her demeanor shifted abruptly. Her voice became cold, calculated, venom dripping from every carefully chosen word. "Enough. Tell me, right now, which team was monitoring anomalous activity in this sector?" One official hesitated, briefly, before answering. "Team ZL71, led by Agent Drazik, ma'am." "Is Agent Drazik alive?" "Yes, ma'am." Her 4 eyes narrowed dangerously. "Good. Have him prepped immediately for debriefing. I'm done hearing about blind spots and data corruption. It's time to make an example and remind everyone of the seriousness of this matter." "Ma'am?" One official began timidly, attempting reassurance. "All of our agents fully understand." Before he could finish, she spun, grabbing him fiercely by the throat and forcing him roughly to his knees. Her cybernetically enhanced strength and viciousness more than making up for the male's larger size. Both pairs of eyes bulged with sudden fear, gasping as her long claw-tipped fingers tightened slowly, deliberately crushing his airway, drawing blood, and coming dangerously close to his artery. Maintaining her calm facade, she addressed the others coolly. "It has been 3 years, and none of you have managed to produce answers. 3 years. She emphasized the number with a voice that deepened with rage, causing the others to flinch. "The previous director is currently undergoing re-education precisely because he allowed such incompetence. I was brought in to stop this." She gestured dismissively toward the devastation surrounding them. "From ever happening again." She released the man abruptly, allowing him to collapse, gasping onto the ground, beads of blood trickling down his neck. His skin turned the unmistakable color of terror. Quills matted against his head in fear and submission, as he struggled desperately for breath. Turning her penetrating gaze to each official in turn, she said softly yet menacingly, "This is me being nice. This is me being friendly and understanding. You absolutely do not want to see me lose that understanding. I want answers. Not theories, not guesswork. Answers. Find them." 1411 hours local. Arvaz City. Outskirts. In a stealth suborbital craft perched silently on an adjacent rooftop, a Vishari handler observed a holographic display. Projected before him was a 3-meter spherical field centered on Agent Drazik, who was meticulously scanning a shelf in an ancient, dust-caked maintenance shaft beneath the city. Additional translucent panels hovered around the display, showing Drazik's biometrics, audio readings, and direct visual feeds from his ocular implants. The shaft was unremarkable, long abandoned, its utilities gutted centuries ago. But according to planetary analysts, this exact coordinate had emitted a burst of encrypted signal traffic moments before the Arvaz detonation. No origin point, no destination. Just a spike in activity no one could explain. And with the director breathing fire into every department, even weeklies were treated like gospel. On the shelf, the agent examined an array of strange items. Jars of dirt, iron filings, metal shavings, and pressurized canisters bearing half-erased hazard symbols. "Are you getting this?" Drazik asked quietly. "Receiving everything," the handler replied, keeping his voice level. "Reinforcement squads are en route. ETA 90 seconds. Maintain position." He leaned forward, slightly, gaze narrowing. "There is nothing here that explains the signals we interpreted." Drazik's voice was tense. "There's no power source I can see. No comms hardware. This shelf looks like a garbage cache. If something came from this site, it's already gone." "Let's not jump to conclusions," the handler said. "After 3 years of hunting whatever this is, it's bound to make a mistake eventually." "I still say this is a waste of time," I'm like 1,000% certain it's a rogue AI, he said, with confidence and even a hint of annoyance. Well, I still think it's one of the factions trying to start a civil war. I mean, did you see the debate last night? The handler said rhetorically, before continuing without waiting for an answer. The War Council and State Security are at each other's throats, and they are on the same side. Not to mention the half-dozen Xenolover factions vying for control. After a pause to see if his agent would chime in, he tried to bait him out. Can you imagine those people? Venom purposefully added to people. Want to end the expansion? He let that hang in the air a bit, knowing Drazik's opinion on the matter. After several seconds of silence, the handler frowned. The hologram showed Drazik hadn't moved in several seconds. Drazik? He asked, tone tightening. No response. Agent Drazik, respond, he said, switching to his professional command voice. Training kicking in, he triggered the emergency drone all agents carried. A small recon drone detached from Drazik's suit, lifted off his shoulder, and activated its independent visual feed. The handler stared. Agent Drazik was hanging from the ceiling, impaled through the throat by a jagged industrial hook. The handler blinked rapidly. Panicked, he turned back to the holographic projection that showed the former agent's surroundings. There stood Drazik, upright, calm, head slightly tilted, staring directly at him. The figure tilted his head the other way, slowly, deliberately. The handler scrambled for the comms. Reinforcement teams, report in! Static. After waiting for what felt like minutes, but what was actually less than 2 seconds, he launched their drones as well. One by one, the screens lit up with... It took the handler a moment to understand what he was seeing. Carnage. Bodies everywhere. Dismembered. The entire team slaughtered. No gunfire, no signs of resistance. All of them died before reacting. He slammed the catastrophic mission abort switch. Red lights flared. He ran for the cockpit, throwing open the door and dashing for the pilot's seat. The canopy exploded inward. He raised his hands instinctively to protect his face, but they were gone, severed clean at the wrist. Agony hit a moment later. Before he could scream, a force gripped his throat, stopping the air he needed to scream, mid-breath. What he soon realized was a hand lifted him like he weighed nothing, bringing him face to mask with a slowly decloaking figure. The mask wearing a skull he recognized, to his horror and terrible realization. The figure spoke, voice smooth, composed. Thanks for leaving the hatch open. I didn't want to break the ship gaining access and risk the terminals being wiped. He realized with horror how much classified information he had just allowed to be taken. As darkness narrowed his vision, the handler's final thought came with a bitter laugh. At least I won't have to explain this to the director. He chuckled through the blood. Then his world went black. 2107 hours local. Vishari Capital. Command Bunker Core. The war chamber was buried 40 floors below the surface, sealed off from orbital scans, and hardened against prolonged orbital bombardment. Nothing short of planet cracking would penetrate this bunker. Developed from hard-earned lessons from the Great War, cold blue lighting from the wall-length holoscreens cast long shadows across the curved walls. One screen replayed the aftermath of Arvaz City. Another played Agent Drazik's final moments before the feed cut out. Still others played the bloody scenes from the dropship and slaughtered backup team. Nobody spoke. Director Soryn stood at the center of the chamber, her spine frigid, forearms folded tightly behind her back. Her four eyes scanned the room independently, each one locking onto a different official around the table. Leaders representing the 5 pillars of Ashari society: the military, internal security, civilian oversight, logistics, and intelligence. She didn't look tired. She looked like she was looking for an excuse to kill. "Someone," she began, letting the silence drag before she continued, "please explain to me how a fusion bomb was detonated in the largest industrial center in the system." Her voice was flat, cold, and dared someone to offer a convenient excuse. No one did. "You're all going to go over everything," she continued. "Every incident, every unexplained death, every anomaly that's occurred in this system over the last 3 years. I don't care how small. If a worker's badge shorted out during a shift change, I want it logged." Around the table, A's were already being whispered to. Data slates flickered to life. Encrypted archives were summoned, cross-checked, fed into personal overlays. Everyone scrambled. Except one. Head analyst Varash didn't move. He just spoke. "We've been watching something," he said. "A slow build-up, sabotage in unmanned relays, cargo haulers vanishing along cleared lanes, system comms outposts going dark with no discernible malicious causes before coming back online. Those manning the stations completely unaware they went dark. Each event, small, spread out, easy to explain away. The only consistency between them is how fast investigators are able to produce a plausible reason." High Marshal Tolvek leaned forward. "And you didn't bring this up until now?" "We tried," Varash responded, raising his voice before catching himself and calming down. "Each of your teams has cancelled the meetings we requested for months." The High Marshal's quills gave the faintest twitch. He knew he fucked up as he noticed all 4 of the director's eyes, boring into him. He slowly sat back in his chair, not wanting to dig a deeper hole. "There is something else," Varash added, seeing the tension in the room skyrocket. "The rescue efforts in Arvaz have been moving exceedingly slow," he began, as he brought up a holodisplay showing the remains of the city, along with various facts and figures floating around it. "There has been severe mismanagement of resources and personnel on the ground. It has gotten so bad the regional governor has had to tap outside logistical and military assets to come in to take command. This has led to..." "What gave you the impression I care about the cleanup efforts, analyst?" the director said to cut him off. I'm... he stuttered, before regaining his composure. "That is not what I mean, director." "If this has a point, you better make it soon." "Yes, well, we learned that over the past year, there has been over 800 accidental deaths of various governmental employees globally. These employees would have been key decision-makers for the relief effort for Arvaz. We do not think this is a coincidence, and we believe Arvaz wasn't the actual target." The director's upper eyes narrowed at the analyst before nodding. "Your initial approach was right. Tell me everything. Every detail you know." Varash cleared his throat and then began. "At first, we were trying to determine the cause of the mismanagement. Problems at this scale should not have been possible after all of the controls put in place during the war," he began. "As we looked into it, we discovered an alarming amount of newer personnel filling roles they were not ready for, or seasoned employees having to juggle multiple jobs at once due to staffing issues," he continued. "As you are all aware, staffing issues are unheard of since the end of the war. Both governmental and civilian agencies pride themselves on this logistical feat alone." As Varash said this, Senior Adjuster of Civilian Oversight, Sarek, nodded in approval, happy to pretend this statement won him just the smallest amount of favor with the director. "When we looked into the causes, we discovered that over the past year alone, we had over 800 accidental or premature deaths of various governmental and civilian employees that either directly or indirectly tied to this event. Approximately 30% of these employees dealt with logistical lines that solely handled necessary goods like rations, medical equipment, and automotive parts. Another 30% dealt with communications and communication repairs, 20% dealt with the tracking of MBC weapons and material components of said weapons, and a further 8% dealt with direct disaster relief and planning. MBC. Nuclear, biological, chemical. Automotive parts, how does that tie in? Minister Rellan, head of internal security, asked. Our ground and suborbital vehicles need routine maintenance. Without parts, they don't move, and without supply personnel, we don't get parts. High Marshal Torvik responded. But why wasn't that flagged? Surely our ships not being able to operate should have thrown red flags. Sirek asked animatedly, always one to look to capitalize on someone else's misfortune or misstep. You would be right if this affected ships or any other orbital vehicle. But it didn't. They were left unaffected, and all suborbital vehicles follow a different reporting system. A system that justifiably doesn't rank shortages as so important that outside agencies will become aware, Torvik answered, his face a mask of realization and dread. Correct, High Marshal, Varesh confirmed. The room was stock still. Even the director seemed shaken at picture being painted. How was this not discovered sooner? The director quietly asked. This many government employees dying in such a short amount of time should have alerted someone. How did no one catch the spike in deaths? 2 reasons, Director. First, because there wasn't a spike, the analyst said, to a room full of incredulous looks. Specifically, there wasn't a spike in government deaths. Total government deaths actually went down over the last 2 years. If you look at every other sector, overall deaths are down. Even the mortality rate of high mortality illnesses has dropped, he began, as he brought up a graph that showed deaths over time per sector. Every line had a downward trend, except for the 4 sectors he had mentioned. He then combined them all to show how the overall deaths over time trend went down. How? She began. How is that possible? Some group out there has been saving the lives of others, so they can hide the deaths of their targets, Varesh mused, getting lost in the graph before continuing on. We have, with a high level of certainty, narrowed down the deaths of just under 2,300 people connected to this, 814 of which we believe were direct targets, and 1,471 killed when they started asking questions about it, which is my second reason. Anyone able to look past the data and follow a hunch found themselves in a fatal car crash, or the victim of a faulty fire suppression system, among many, many accidental deaths, he ended, using his lower arms to slap the elbows of his upper arms, in a Vishari display that meant sarcasm. 814 Vishari killed, so less skilled people could take their place. There was silence in the room. No one knew what to make of this information. The scale of it, the logistical scope alone was insane, and that was before you factored how many systems would have to have been compromised to allow this to happen unnoticed. But why, though? Sirek absent-mindedly asked. What? Torvik replied. Why slow down the rescue efforts? It's an awful lot of work for so little gain. It's a smokescreen, Rellan finally spoke up. This was to cover up the real plan, and either to keep us too divided to pay attention, and too occupied to react quickly when we do. And who can pull off this level of sophisticated attack? Torvik added in. I haven't seen this level of coordination, obfuscation, and covert skills since... He continued. Before shutting his mouth, before he made a mistake he couldn't walk back, only realizing it was too late when the director looked at him with narrowed eyes. Well, since when, High Marshal? Sirek asked, to the horror of the other leaders. Being the youngest of the leaders, he was too young to know what everyone else already suspected. Yes, High Marshal. Since when? The director pointedly asked. Since the war, he reluctantly answered. Humans? Sirek half-asked, half-stated. Had he been paying closer attention, he might have noticed the shudders that went through most of those present in the room at the name. They had been extinct since I was a hatchling. You were too young to remember the war, Adjuster, the director began. Yes, the humans were declared extinct at the end of the war, but you will not know of the 30 years of post-war counterinsurgency we fought after the war ended. A counterinsurgency against their augments. At the mention of the word augment, Tolvek visibly shuddered. While everyone in the room other than Cyrek knew of the human augments, their last-ditch effort to stop the extinction of their species, only Director Soryn and High Marshal Tolvek were old enough to have fought against them. Those memories still haunt both their dreams, though neither would admit it to anyone for fear of looking weak, and because knowledge of the augments is classified to the highest standard. High Marshal, read the Adjuster in on the history, she stated before continuing on. Head Analyst Farash, she began with finality in her voice. You are now directly in command of this hunt. It is your one and only mission. You now speak with my authority, she stated, with heavy emphasis on the word my. You have full discretion on decision-making and procurement. The rest of you, she continued, looking each leader in the face one at a time, will make any and every assist that the head analyst requests available to him. There will be no... She pauses to let it sink in before continuing. Discussion. If he decides he needs your sons and daughters to pleasure him while he thinks, you will provide, or you will spend time with the former director in my personal re-education chamber. Tolvek, to his credit, remained stock still and seemingly unfazed, if you look past the new beeze's sweat rolling down his face. The others did not fare as well. Several lost colour in their skin, and their quills vibrated quickly, while matted against their heads. She turned to Varash. Do not fail me, before looking at each in turn. Find whatever is responsible for this. If you fail, before the Emperor has my head, I will have all of yours. And one last thing. No idea or avenue of search is prohibited. But I say this once, and only once. Do not discuss humanity outside of this room without my explicit approval. Humanity is extinct, and will remain that way until I have absolute proof to the contrary.